Commissioner of Police Major General Anthony Anderson is the first dignitary to arrive. Right?
There he is. He's making his way, giving a smart salute. He's making his way up to the dais where he will give his first inspection of the Guard of Honor. Before this assignment, Major General Anderson was serving as the National Security Advisor, with his December 2016 appointment marking the first time someone was named in this capacity in Jamaica. Many of you also know that prior to this, the Commissioner had a distinguished military career in the Jamaica Defense Force spanning 34 years and culminating in his 6-year tenure as the Chief of Defense Staff.
On screen now, we are witnessing the arrival of the Chief of Defense Staff, Lieutenant General Rocky Meade. Lieutenant General Meade was appointed December 1, 2016, and as you said before, Theodore, he succeeded Major General Anthony Anderson.
Now, when he arrives, he will be heading to the saluting dais. and he will receive a sword salute, Lorraine, during which he will glance over, and after he has had that quick look at his troops to ensure everything is in place, then they will truly be ready to receive the Governor General.
Lieutenant General Meade is taking up his position to await the arrival of the Governor General. His position by the saluting dais. We are now seeing the arrival of members of the Senate.
Followed very closely by members of Parliament from the government on the government side. We're seeing them walking down from the north of Duke Street, which historically is the area from which the Jamaica Labour Party enters Parliament. There's Prime Minister Andrew Holness.
Leading the members of the upper and lower house, we're seeing Member of Parliament and Attorney General Marlene Mallohu Fort, Member of Parliament and wife of the Prime Minister Juliet Holness,
and they're making their way to the building, followed by the chairs of supporters as well. There we see Dr. Nigel Clark as well, and we mentioned that later today the 2020-2021 estimates of expenditure will be tabled by the Finance Minister. That's Dr. Clark. After the delivery of the throne speech happens in the morning session of the opening of Parliament.
The members of the upper, so it will be a joint sitting of Parliament, and the members of the upper and lower house will take their seats inside the chamber as they await the arrival of the Governor General and the delivery of the throne speech. Prime Minister Andrew Holness and members of his administration giving a quick wave to supporters standing outside Gordon House along Duke Street. On screen we are seeing Minister of Health Dr. Christopher Tufton, or Tourism Minister Edmund Bartlett, Minister of Justice Delroy Chuck, making their way inside the chamber. And if it is that you are just joining us, ladies and gentlemen, we are bringing you the sight, sound, color, and excitement associated with the ceremonial opening of Parliament. We are witnessing the ceremonial opening of the 2020-2021 legislative year.
Indeed. And we thank you for joining us online from the GIS website or Facebook page. Anywhere that you're joining us from, we welcome you to this formal opening of Parliament.
We are your hosts, Lorraine Mendez and Theodore Henry.
Right now on screen, as the final entrance from the government side are entering the building, the JDF streetliners remain at attention.
The Guard of Honor is in position, awaiting the arrival of the Governor General. ceremonial opening of Parliament marks the beginning of a new legislative year. And today's Guard Commander is Major Andrew Senior. As we may have mentioned before, the Guard of Honor is furnished by JR1, that's the 1st Battalion, the Jamaica Regiment. Subaltern of the Guard is 2nd Lieutenant Zamain Witter. We spoke about colors earlier, so we have the color ensign, who will be holding what would appear to look like flags, but indeed, Theodore, they are not flags, they are colors.
Indeed. And in particular, you're seeing it there, the color that resembles the Jamaica flag, and I say resembles deliberately because it's not quite the Jamaican flag, is known as the Queen's color. It symbolizes the monarch as Jamaica's head of state. The other color that we're seeing represents the regiment or unit of the JDF that forms the Guard of Honor. But Lorraine, a bit more detail on what we expect to be happening inside. For the morning session, we're all awaiting to hear a throne speech by the Governor General. And that throne speech outlines the government's priorities for the new fiscal year. And at the conclusion of that throne speech, that formally marks the end of the ceremonial opening of Parliament.
Indeed, on screen now is the President of the Senate, Thomas Tavares Finson, and his wife. The Governor General's throne speech this morning will be delivered with the theme "Towards a Decade of Growth to Anchor Our Peace and Prosperity."
And though the throne speech marks the end of the ceremonial opening of Parliament, now we're seeing on screen the arrival
Leader
of the
opposition, Dr. Peter Phillips, marshalling his troops into Gordon House.
Indeed. Entering from the south side of Duke Street, waving to the many supporters who have come out to be a part of this ceremony. And as the leader of opposition makes his way, just to point out that after the ceremonial opening, the House of Representatives will reconvene at approximately 2 p.m. for the tabling of the estimates of expenditure that we've mentioned for the new financial year. And those estimates of expenditure, or the national budget, they provide details on government spending for the fiscal year, including allocations for current and capital expenses.
So under the Jamaican Constitution, or Parliament consists of Her Majesty the Queen, the Senate, and the House of Representatives. Members of both houses would be inside the chamber awaiting the Governor General, who is Her Majesty's representative in Jamaica. Now, the Senate consists of 21 senators, 13 of whom are appointed by the Governor General on the advice of the Prime Minister, and 8 on the advice of the Leader of the Opposition. Speaking of the Leader of the Opposition, there he is on screen, Dr. Peter Phillips, and he is flanked by the opposition members of Parliament and members of the Shadow Cabinet.
BBC Wickham McNeil, member of the Shadow Cabinet Lisa Hanna, Peter Bunting, Dr. Fenton Ferguson, all making their way up the street, waving to supporters. Philip Paulwell, And it's the members of the shadow cabinet as well as the members of the Senate as well. They're all coming together into Gordon House.
As we saw earlier with the government side.
Justice Sykes.
Chief Justice of Jamaica, Brian
Enter.
Sykes. So it's a tradition that members of parliament and senators aligned to the People's National Party enter parliament by walking from the southern end of Duke Street. So they walked past headquarters house and they are making their way inside the chamber. Traditionally, members of the Jamaica Labour Party and the People's National Party approach Gordon House from opposite ends of Duke Street.
And you know, Lorraine, some say the JLP walks from the northern end of Duke Street because they used to assemble in the Bustamante Industrial Trade Union headquarters, which is just a little further up the road.
On screen is Director of Public Prosecutions, Paula Llewellyn. So members of the judiciary are making their way inside Gordon House as well. The streetliners of the Jamaica Defence Force and further up the road, the Jamaica Constabulary Force are ensuring that the area remains sterile. On screen approaching is the vehicle bearing wife of the Governor General, Lady Allen.
And she will disembark first, and finally the Governor General will arrive.
Lady Allen will be met by the Commissioner of Police and the Deputy Clerk, who will escort her into the chamber. On screen, Her Excellency, Lady Allen, Lady Patricia Allen. We are right on time. We are expecting the Governor General to arrive at about 10:49 a.m. So everything is happening within time for this ceremonial opening of Parliament. Lady Allen ensures she secures her hat. It's gotten a little windy on the outside, Theodore.
It has. And there she goes, making her way into the building, greeted by members of the judiciary and escorted by Major General Anthony Anderson.
Right, so she is met by the Deputy Clerk of the House of Representatives of the Houses of Parliament, who is escorting her inside the chamber.
We're seeing movement amongst the streetliners.
The Guard of Honor is ensuring that it is in place and everything is impeccable for the inspection by Governor General, His Excellency Sir Patrick Allen.
And I believe that is Sir Patrick Allen making his way down Duke Street, accompanied by
mounted troops.
Guard mounted on horseback.
Some mounted escorts accompany the Governor General as he walks he will walk onto the red carpet and he will step onto the saluting dais so that he can be seen by all.
And it is at that point that the Governor General will receive a royal salute. Ladies and gentlemen, the Governor General of Jamaica, His Excellency Sir Patrick Allen, has arrived.
He is met by Chief of Defense Staff, Lieutenant General Rocky Mead, as he prepares to inspect the Guard of Honor. Lieutenant General Mead will escort the Governor General to the saluting dais. The Governor General will get into position, Theodore, to receive a royal salute.
Right, he is now in position on the dais.
Royal salute! Present! Arm!
At this point, it appears that the national Governor General will now proceed to inspect the Guard of Honor, after which he will receive a second royal salute.
Sir Patrick will now do his inspection of the Guard of Honor. And as we've told you earlier, this morning's Guard of Honor is furnished by the Jamaica Defense Force 1st Battalion, the Jamaica Regiment, JR1. JR1 is the first regular fighting, that's infantry unit of the Jamaica Defense Force. It was formed on the 31st of July 1962 along with 3 other units to create the Jamaica Defense Force just days before Jamaica's independence. Jamaica gained independence from Britain and needed her own armed force, Theodore, as a new sovereign state. And the members of this newly formed infantry regiment were drawn from the disbanded West India Regiment, who were the former colonial forces representing Britain.
And you know, the Guard of Honor are placed in specific formation. The right half, where the Guard Commander stands at the front, you can just see the Guard Commander on your screen. Then in the center, with the color party. Then to the left are the others with the subaltern to the Guard.
And subaltern to the Guard today is Second Lieutenant Zamain Witter.
And the Guard Commander is Major Andrew Senior. The color party includes the color ensigns and the escorts, and these are 2 officers who are honored to carry the colors of the unit. We detailed the colors earlier. Today's color ensigns are 2nd Lieutenant Nicar White and 2nd Lieutenant Roger Williams.
his inspection complete, the Governor General will then receive the second royal salute.
After which he will be escorted into the chamber, where sittings of both houses of Parliament are held. A flourish of trumpets will then be played to signal the Governor General's arrival in Gordon House.
Royal salute. Recess. Arm.
A proud moment for Jamaica. We saw the Jamaican flag on screen. What we're seeing now on our screen that appeared to touch the ground is actually not the Jamaican flag, but it is the Queen's colour, which is in the design format of the Jamaican flag. The Governor General is now making his way inside the chamber to deliver the throne speech, escorted by Chief of Defence Staff, Lieutenant General Rocky Meade and Heather Cook. Of course, Heather Cook is clerk of the Houses of Parliament.
Excellency, the Governor General.
Madam Clerk, would you kindly invite the members of the Honourable House of Representatives to attend at the place appointed for the meeting of the Senate? I now invite the President of the Jamaica Council of Churches to say prayer.
Let us pray. Almighty God, from whom all wisdom and power are derived, we beseech Thee so to direct and prosper the deliberations of this Parliament now assembled, that all things may be ordered upon the best and surest foundations for the glory of Thy name and for the safety, honor, and welfare of the people of this island. Bless our Sovereign Lady, Queen Elizabeth, Philip, Duke of Edinburgh, Charles, Prince of Wales, and all the royal family. Give grace to all who exercise authority in our Commonwealth, that peace and happiness, truth and justice, true faith and piety may be established among us. Especially we pray for the Governor General of our island, the Prime Minister, the Leader of the Opposition, the Senators and members of the House of Representatives, that they may be enabled faithfully to perform the responsible duties of their high office. All this we ask for Thy great name's sake. Amen. May I invite us all together to pray the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, which art in heaven, hallowed be Thy name. Thy kingdom come. Thy will be done in earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive them that trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For Thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. The Lord bless us and keep us. The Lord make His face to shine upon us and be gracious unto us. May the Lord lift up His countenance upon us and give us peace now and always. Amen.
Please be seated.
Constitution of Jamaica, a proclamation by His Excellency the Most Honorable Sir Patrick Linton Allen, Member of the Order of the Nation, Knight Grand Cross of the Most Distinguished Order of St. Michael and St. George, Commander of the Order of Distinction, Knight of Grace of the Most Venerable Order of the Hospital of St. John of Jerusalem, Governor General of Jamaica. Whereas it is provided by subsection 1 of section 63 of the Constitution of Jamaica that each session of Parliament of Jamaica shall be held in such place and shall commence at such time as the Governor General may by proclamation appoint. And whereas it is expedient that a session of the Parliament of Jamaica should be held at such place and commence at such time as shall hereinafter appear, now, therefore, I, Patrick Linton Allen, Member of the Order of the Nation, Knight Grand Cross of the Most Distinguished Order of St. Michael and St. George, Commander of the Order of Distinction, Knight of Grace of the Most Venerable Order of the Hospital of St. John of Jerusalem, Governor General of Jamaica, in exercise of the power conferred on me by subsection 1 of section 63 of the Constitution of Jamaica, do hereby proclaim and make known that a session of the Parliament of Jamaica shall be held at George William Gordon House in the parish of Kingston, commencing at 11 o'clock a.m. on the 11th day of February 2020. Given under my hand and the broad seal of Jamaica at King's House this 21st day of January in the year of our Lord 2020, and the 68th year of the reign of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II. God save the Queen.
Mr. President and members of the Senate, Mr. Speaker, and members of the House of Representatives, I'm pleased to present the throne speech representing my government's directions for the 2020-2021 financial year under the theme "Towards a Decade of Growth to Anchor Our Peace and Prosperity." Honorable members, we're gathered here at the dawn of a new decade. The seeds we have planted in the previous years are germinating, and we commit to making this decade one of increased growth, peace, and prosperity in our land. Jamaica has much to celebrate. Our emphasis on inclusive and sustainable economic growth has paid great dividends for our beloved nation. In recent years, Jamaica has made an extraordinary economic turnaround. We have experienced 19 consecutive quarters of positive economic growth. Our debt to GDP ratio is projected to be below 92% by the end of March 2020, from a high of 147% 7 years ago. Lower levels of debt accumulation and servicing have resulted in the state of being able to redirect resources to invest in areas that will promote social and infrastructural development. Our October 2019 unemployment rate of 7.2% is the lowest in Jamaica's history. Our regulatory reforms aimed at lessening the time and cost to do business have resulted in Jamaica being ranked as the best economy in the Caribbean for ease of doing business. We have trained more than 20,000 persons through the HOPE program and the Jamaica National Service Corps, and training continues. Jamaica is at the forefront of global efforts towards positive action on climate change and good environmental stewardship. The government has implemented a ban on single-use plastic and polystyrene, started a program to to plant 3 million trees, one for each Jamaican, and is continuously transforming our energy and electricity sector to be more sustainable. Over the last 4 years, the National Housing Trust, NHT, the Housing Agency of Jamaica, HAJ, and the private sector developers would have recorded over 30,000 housing units started. While we must celebrate and justly be proud of our accomplishments, we must acknowledge that there is no room for complacency in an increasingly connected but rapidly changing world. Our government has created a set of plans, policies, programs, and legislation which demonstrates its resolve to make this Jamaica's decade of growth, peace, and prosperity as we move forward to fulfill Vision 2020. Honorable members, the Office of the Prime Minister has responsibility for the overall performance and effective management of the government. In 2019-2020, the largest merger ever in the history of Jamaica's public sector was completed. The Human Employment and Resource Training, HEART Trust, National Training Agency, NTA, the Jamaica Foundation for Lifelong Learning, and the National Youth Service and Apprenticeship Boards were merged to create the HEART National Service and Training Agency Trust, a total human capital development institution for Jamaica. In 2017, at the start of the merger, HEART was training 74,000 persons. In 2018-2019, 132,000 persons were trained. For 2019-2020, HEART is on target to train 152,600 persons. Honorable members, this is a 106% increase. Under the National Identification System, NIDS project, the non-NIDS activities have commenced. For example, infrastructure upgrades that are necessary to strengthen Jamaica's cybersecurity profile. The government will also complete implementation of the National Key Public Infrastructure Project and advance the digital transformation of the Registrar General's Department. The top legislative priorities for the period will include the tabling of a new NIDS bill, amendments to the Registration of Births, Deaths Act, and the review of the National Housing Trust Act regulations. The Ministry of Finance and the Public Service. Jamaica has successfully concluded its program with the International Monetary Fund in November 2019. Over the course of this 3-year precautionary standby agreement, the government of Jamaica met all structural benchmarks, all quantitative performance criteria, and all indicative targets. Our economic achievements, based on where we are coming from, have been nothing short of extraordinary and have been globally recognized. We have now had several years of low inflation and record low interest rates. Business and consumer confidence are high. Our stock market is among the best performing in the world. International rating agencies, Moody's, Standard & Poor's, and Fitch, have all recently upgraded the government of Jamaica's long-term foreign and local currency ratings to their highest levels in decades. Our net international reserves now stand at over $3 billion US. Economic independence for Jamaica is no longer a dream. It is becoming a reality. The government continues to focus on strengthening public financial administration medium-term results based on budgeting. Budgeting has been introduced in all ministries, departments, and agencies. The regulations for the nomination, selection, and appointment of boards in support of transparency were tabled in the Houses of Parliament and affirmed by the House of Representatives in December 2019. Tax Administration Jamaica advanced its ISO 9001-2015 Quality Management System certification, a first for tax administrations across the Caribbean, and has enhanced its business processes, technology, and physical infrastructure to effect improvements in the quality and delivery of services. The legislation to make permanent the establishment and abolishment, rather, of the minimum business tax, the asset tax for non-financial businesses, the ad valorem stamp duty, and the transfer of property on financial transactions were all passed during the year. In addition to the transfer tax applicable to transfers of real estate was reduced by 60% during the year. The new program regime came into existence during the year, and regulation was passed to allow Jamaican suppliers, in particular small, medium-sized suppliers, preferential access. Modernization of the Bank of Jamaica is being advanced through a bill to amend the Bank of Jamaica Act. The government will continue its focus on customs modernization by advancing the Custom Act. The microcredit bill, which tabled during the year, will be amended, taking into account feedback from consultation with the sector. The government has continued its policy of using the public equity markets as a vehicle for divestment of public assets to allow broad-scale ownership of these assets by Jamaicans. In April 2019, history was made when 31,200 Jamaicans invested in the initial public offer, IPO, of Wigton Farms Limited. The government recently launched an offer for sale of shares in Trans-Jamaican Highway Limited. This is expected to be the largest IPO in Jamaica's history and possibly in the entire region. Similar divestments are planned for later this year. Building on the work done in 2019, the government will be tabling other critical pieces of legislation that will improve Jamaica's economy. An act to establish an independent fiscal council will strengthen Jamaica's fiscal responsibility regime. The Pension Superannuation Fund and Retirement Schemes Amendment Bill, which is the second phase of private pension reform to deal with portability, vesting, and participation in multiple schemes, among other reforms. The amendment to the Financial Services Commission Act to facilitate consolidated supervision for non-deposit taking groups. Honourable members, the government continues to foster synergies among its agencies for increased efficiency and effectiveness in improving our infrastructure. The government recognizes the universal access to safe potable water is a key development priority. The National Water Sector Policy, which will guide the provision of universal access to safe potable water to all Jamaicans by 2030, was tabled as a white paper in the Houses of Parliament in July 2019. As part of the policy implementation, the government convened the Integrated Water Resources Management Council to serve as the advisory body for the management of the island's water resources. This year, our government will provide water supply solutions to approximately 180,000 rural residents. Our island is already experiencing the impacts of climate variations with more intense drought and unpredictable weather. As part of Jamaica's strategy response to climate change, the government recently launched a national tree planting program targeting the planting of 3 million trees, one for each Jamaican, over the next 3 years. Honourable members, in Jamaica in January 2020, the first cruise ship with approximately 2,000 visitors docked at the new Port Royal cruise ship terminal. The development of this terminal posed special environmental challenges. An innovative floating articulating pier, seawalk, was installed without having to dredge or drive piles. This project demonstrated the commitment to making development happen. This year, the government will complete the National Squatter Survey to accurately determine the extent of squatting in the country and to provide critical information to guide the completion of the National Squatter Management Policy and Implementation Plan. The Real Estate Board will merge the Real Estate Board, the Commission of Strata Corporations, and the Registrar of Timeshares into the Real Estate Authority of Jamaica. Honourable members, housing remains a key priority for the government. In line with Vision 2030, every Jamaican should have access to safe, sustainable, and affordable housing. We need to build enough housing solutions at a rate which will prevent informal settling. Between the NHT and the HAJ, over 10,000 housing starts were slated and are slated for this fiscal year, with plans to continue to accelerate the delivery of housing solutions in the coming year. In the government's continued drive to improve access to loans and support for home ownership, the NHT widened income bands, increased its loan limit, introduced intergenerational mortgage, and reduced mortgage interests by 1% across the board. The government's new social housing program has completed the administrative phase and will commence full rollout. The coming years will also see continued heavy investment in infrastructure under the Greater Infrastructure Development Program, GIDP. The GIDP is a multi-year comprehensive infrastructure program which includes not just roads, but bridges and structures, street lighting, sidewalks and ramps, traffic lights, water and sewage, fire hydrants, and drainage. We will be building smart infrastructure with fiber optics, cameras, and sensors designed and embedded into our infrastructure assets. Aligned with this, honorable members, will be the Lengthman program, a preventative maintenance program for rural roads and high-trafficked corridors built on a performance-based system and enabled by technology. This program will be executed at the community level by local residents. The government's vision is to create modern, smart, and sustainable urban centers. The aim is to make places that are accessible, secure, clean, and connected for the enjoyment of the people and the pride of the nation. Honorable members, the next fiscal year will herald the beginning of Jamaica's first purpose-built parliament, out of many, one people. Which emerged as the winning design. The new Parliament building and the transformation of the National Heroes Park is part of the master plan to redevelop downtown Kingston. Honorable members, during the 2019-2020 legislative year, the government made considerable strides in advancing its policy agenda to support national crime-fighting strategies. This included the passage of the Proceeds of Crime Amendment Act 2019 and attendant regulations to strengthen local anti-money laundering and counter-terrorism financing efforts. The development of regulations to support the Major Organized Crime and Anti-Corruption Agency, amendments to the Criminal Justice Suppression of Criminal Organization Act, as well as the Firearms Act were also achieved. These pieces of legislation are expected to significantly curtail and disrupt the work of organized criminal networks. The government maintains that a whole-of-society approach is required to tackle the issue of crime and violence. Through the infusion of technology and significant capital investment, the government will continue its multi-agency approach to social intervention efforts. Building on the work done in 2019, the government will be seeking to table other critical pieces of legislation that will enable improved security operations. The Law Enforcement Protection of Integrity Act will encourage and promote integrity among persons provided with law enforcement powers, thereby strengthening measures for the prevention and detection of acts of corruption and other criminal acts. The Corrections Amendment Act will update and strengthen the law and make it more aligned to current trends, taking into consideration modern technological advances and increases in existing penalties for breaches. Aliens Act and Immigration Restriction Commonwealth Citizens Act amendments legislation will allow for improved management of current trends in immigration breaches and border security control mechanism. Honorable members, the first year of the primary exit profile assessment was successfully administered with a total of 40,423 students sitting the examination in 2019 and 54% being classified as proficient or highly proficient. The implementation of the Twinning of Schools program, which is geared at sharing of resources and expertise to benefit students from both institutions, resulted in 47 schools being twinned so far and another 16 being considered for this year. Additionally, the Breakfast program has been expanded to benefit 70,000 children in 822 schools across the early childhood and primary levels. The National Plan of Action for an Integrated Response to Children and Violence was tabled in Parliament in June 2019 and is now being implemented. For this year, the focus of the legislative agenda will be on Jamaica Teaching Council Bill, which seeks to establish the Jamaica Teaching Council and a system of licensing teachers to improve the status of the teaching profession. The Higher Education Bill, which will seek to modernize and strengthen the legal and regulatory framework for the sector, the amendments to the Education Act and regulations will modernize the legal and regulatory framework governing the statutory system of public education. The government will continue to focus on infrastructural development to provide adequate school places for children at all levels and advance the process of eliminating the shift system in 7 schools and the continued implementation of the 7 years of secondary education, which includes the mainstreaming of the Career Advancement Program and the National School Leaving Certificate. The government will also advance plans for the development of new high schools focused on science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. STEM education. Honorable members, our tourism sector continues to grow from strength to strength. In 2019, Jamaica welcomed 4.3 million visitors, which made up of 2.7 million stopover visitors and 1.6 million cruise visitors. In this year, the focus will be on broadening our source markets for tourists through aggressive marketing. The new Port Royal cruise terminal presents tremendous opportunities for tourism to position Port Royal and Kingston as a unique heritage and culture tourism destination in the Caribbean. Using the power of digital technologies, the Jamaica Tourist Board has adopted a new marketing strategy and brand positioning with the tagline, Jamaica, the heartbeat of the world. In 2019, a major step towards improving the welfare of tourism workers was achieved when the Tourism Workers' Pension Act, which establishes a defined contributory pension scheme for all tourism workers, whether they are self-employed, employed, or contract worker, was passed. The legislative program for the next fiscal year will seek to amend the following pieces of legislation. The Bath of St. Thomas the Apostle Amendment Act and Regulations and the Milk River Bath Amendment Act will facilitate the development and modernization of the facilities through public-private partnerships. The Tourist Board Act amendments are designed to modernize its provisions and regulations and will strengthen the enforcement provisions. The modernization of the Travel Agency Act and the regulations will take into account contemporary developments that have occurred since it came into existence in 1956. The Ministry of Culture, Entertainment and Sports. In 2019, we marked the centenary of the Honorable Louise Bennett Coverly Miss Lou with a 100-day celebration throughout Jamaica and the diaspora, highlighting the significance of her contribution to the shaping of the Jamaica culture, identity, literature, theater, music, media content, and folklore. We all proudly witnessed the global recognition of Jamaican talent in the tremendous recent achievement of Miss Tonian Singh, who was crowned Miss World 2019, and Miss Michaela Simpson Coffey, who became the youngest artist and first female solo reggae artist to win Grammy Award for Best Reggae Album. In preparation for the arrival of cruise ship passengers in Port Royal, residents were trained in order to create products which reflect its history and heritage. This year, the government will focus on implementation of the Culture and Creative Industries Policy, which provides for the building of capacity and development of their structure. The government also plans to introduce entertainment, creative enterprise, and sports zones and museums. The government continues to increase the number of shelters as part of its approach to support victims of gender-based violence and the activation of 3 shelters. Key legislative priorities for the government will include a review of Domestic Violence Act, the Sexual Harassment Act, and the development of an entertainment industry policy and act and amendments to the Jamaica National Heritage Trust Act. Honorable members, The government's three main priorities or priority initiatives in the areas of industry, commerce, and agriculture are: 1, irrigation infrastructure development in response to the lack of a consistent water supply for agricultural production; 2, continuation of the National Trade Facilitation Program to continue to enhance the ease of doing business in Jamaica and thereby facilitate increased export activity; and thirdly, the development of new industries such as cannabis, bamboo, sea island cotton, and castor beans. During the 2021 fiscal year, the following legislative priorities will be pursued: Jamaica Promotions Amendment Bill to provide for the implementation of a regulatory regime for the film and motion picture industry and to strengthen the local creative industries. Trademarks Act and Rules Amendment for Jamaica to become a part of the Madrid system and benefit from the international registration. Companies Amendment Bill to strengthen the disclosure of information relating to the beneficial owners of companies while excluding listed companies. Agro Investment Corporation Amendment Act to ensure focus on investment in the local agriculture sector and management of the agri-parks and agroeconomic zones. Honorable members, decisive steps were taken during the past year to improve the health of Jamaicans. Rehabilitation work on the Cornwall Regional Hospital continued with phase 2 of the rehabilitation plan now underway. Construction of the Child and Adolescent Hospital in Western Jamaica was also initiated. In the coming year, rehabilitation and development of infrastructure will continue to be a major focus, and with funding support, we'll see the largest spend in over 3 decades. The vector control program was expanded to address the growing concerns about mosquito-borne diseases. Focus was placed also on reducing the risk factors for non-communicable diseases, which resulted in the expansion of the Jamaica Moves initiative into schools and the reduction of sugar content levels in beverages provided at schools. Further, public patients' access to select diagnostic services was increased through the public-private partnerships. With the emergence of viruses having the potential to become global health threats, as well as the increased prevalence of certain diseases, Jamaica continues to prepare by training staff, equipping facilities, securing the necessary medical supplies, and also making provision for quarantine and isolation facilities as is necessary. The government will continue to exercise vigilance and caution to ensure that we are in the best possible position to respond to any eventualities. Honorable members, with the launch of an ambitious new strategic plan entitled Benchmarking the Future, Courting Success, that will transform the way our courts operate and are managed, the Jamaican judiciary aims to be the best in the Caribbean in 3 years and one of the best in the world in 6 years. Video link and digital audio recording equipment has been installed in 78 courtrooms across the island. The delivery of the Judicial Case Management System, JCMS, and the end-to-end case and electronic document management system is far advanced. Both initiatives are complementary to the efforts of the Judiciary and the Court Administration Division and will significantly transform the landscape within which the courts operate by improving court efficiency, user experience, and by facilitating enhanced protection for vulnerable and intimidated witnesses. The Mobile Justice Initiative, operated by the Legal Aid Council, offers flexibility in the provision of legal services to underserved and high-risk populations, and we continue to expand it to increase access. Major works to expand our court infrastructure will also be advanced to develop 3 regional judicial complexes in the parishes of Manchester, St. Anne, and St. James, and 1 parish court in St. Catherine. Honorable members, as we continue to create a framework that will support and advance the justice reform program, the major legislative priorities for 2020-2021 are reform of the Dogs Liability for Injuries by Act to provide for criminal liability for an owner of a dog that attacks, injures, or causes the death of a person.
Great control.
Introduction of a national mediation policy and the enactment of legislation to increase the use and access to mediation as an alternative method of dispute resolution. Honorable members, for the financial year 2019-2020, the government placed over 18,000 workers in jobs, both locally and overseas, while approximately 2,100 received economic and rehabilitation grants. Persons with disability received grants for their own economic empowerment and assistive devices in the amount of $30 million. 3 mobile units that will enhance accessibility to public assistance services to persons in rural and remote areas have been acquired. This, along with the recently launched Community Engagement Series, will provide additional social and economic support, especially in areas where the incidence of poverty is highest. In the coming year, special focus will be placed on the elderly, and in particular, those without any retirement income. Greater emphasis has been placed on educating employers and employees about the labor laws. A 28% reduction in industrial disputes that required arbitration was noted. One of the government's major priorities, which will facilitate growth and increase efficiencies, is the development of a national policy for productivity improvement. This will require greater emphasis on improving the quality of our workforce through skills training, increased investment in new technologies and techniques, smart use of our public infrastructure, and productivity-friendly policies. The legislative framework to create a fair and equal society for persons with disabilities is also being advanced, and the Disabilities Act will come into effect in the coming year. Additionally, the Disabilities Rights Tribunal will be established and begin hearings. Honorable members, in the government's continued drive to improve access to basic services for all Jamaicans, a comprehensive parochial road rehabilitation program will be undertaken to improve the community road network across all parishes. The Fire Safety and Protection Program will see the construction of 3 new state-of-the-art fire stations in the parishes of St. Thomas, St. Mary, and St. James. Additionally, 4 fire stations, Black River, Falmouth, Ocheries, and St. Anne's Bay, will be renovated. Jamaica is the leading country in the region in disaster preparedness and will be staging the 7th regional platform on disaster risk reduction in the Americas and in the Caribbean in July 2020. The government, in recognizing the importance of having youth as part of the discourse and subsequent response to disaster mitigation, has for the first time in the history of the platform added a youth forum. The government continues to provide care and assistance to the poor and vulnerable who are outside of the infirmaries. 2 drop-in centers were completed and handed over to beneficiaries in the parishes of St. Thomas and Trelawney. 41 indigent houses have also been constructed and handed over, and another 40 repaired. In terms of legislative priorities, the National Solid Waste Management Amendment Bill is expected to be passed to allow the National Solid Waste Management Authority to participate in the Metropolitan Parks and Markets Pension Plan. Additionally, regulations under the new 2018 Building Act will strengthen specific areas of service and enforcement of notices and orders, licensing of building practitioners, and rainwater harvesting. Honorable members, positioning Jamaica as a knowledge-based digital society is a critical priority for the government. The establishment of the ICT Authority in 2019 was an important milestone in this journey. The government electrical regulator is expected to transform the government electrical inspectorate and will be responsible for the regulation of the electrical inspection process, the licensing of electricians and electrical inspectors, including making recommendations for renewal and revocation and monitoring work. When completed, this is expected to further improve Jamaica's standing in the Global Doing Business report. The government plans to introduce the Petroleum Downstream Act to encourage private investment, diversify fuel choices, and promote competition in the downstream natural gas sector. The government has made significant progress towards achieving its revised target to increase the share of renewables in Jamaica's energy generation mix to 50% by 2030. In October 2019, the largest solar farm in the English-speaking Caribbean was commissioned in Westmoreland. Increased use of renewables and innovative ideas such as pumped hydro storage plants to provide integrated solutions to our water and energy sectors will lower costs for consumers and contribute to the environmental preservation. Honorable members, road safety continues to be one of the highest priorities of the government, as despite our efforts to address the situation, the number of fatalities is at an alarming level. The implementation of the Road Traffic Act and other measures, including the use of technology and increased public education, will seek to reduce road fatalities and improve driver behavior. Another area of focus is the procurement of new buses for the Jamaica Urban Transport Company, JUTC, the JUTC fleet, to sustain daily bus deployment and to improve service delivery. The government is also leveraging technology to help clean up and regulate the public passenger industry. The recently launched Drive Safe app, for example, allows members of the public to report drivers who break the law. An emerging area that the government intends to focus on is electric vehicles. The public passenger fleet will be the first area for attention with the introduction of 45 electric buses. The projected benefits of implementing this initiative is quite significant and include energy saving, environmental preservation, and the reduction of the national fuel bill. Legislative priorities in the transport and mining sector will include the following: amendment to the Civil Aviation Act, as it is critical that Jamaica maintains its civil aviation standards in line with international best practices. Shipping Pollution Prevention Response Liability and Compensation Act, to allow for recovery and compensation in the event of an oil spill and contribution by importers of oil to the International Oil Pollution Compensation Fund. Mineral Industries Encouragement Act, to give effect to the draft National Minerals Policy, which proposes to offer incentives encouraging investment into minerals other than bauxite. Honorable members, extensive international engagement is a key foreign policy tool for promoting Jamaica's inclusive, sustainable economic growth agenda and promoting our role as a good global citizen. The government will continue to pursue a robust strategy of engagement with bilateral and multilateral partners in support of our agreed development priorities. To institutionalize the cohesive development partnership with our diaspora, the draft National Diaspora Policy has been approved for tabling in Parliament. Its implementation will be supported by the new Global Jamaica Diaspora Council and the Global Jamaica Youth Diaspora Council. Major goals of the government's regional and multilateral engagement will include supporting the CARICOM Secretariat in the execution of a results-based management system, concluding a new foundation partnership agreement between the ACP states and the EU, together with its CARIFORUM regional protocol, to facilitate new modalities for continued cooperation, and signing and ratifying the revised Georgetown Agreement on the establishment of the new Organization of the African, Caribbean, and Pacific Group of States. Honorable members, as we begin a new decade of growth, we stand at a pivotal point in our history. Our people are deserving of the bountiful reward that will come from our collective efforts at building a stronger and a greater Jamaica. Our collective sacrifices as a people are bearing fruit, and we are better placed than ever before to chart a path to a future of prosperity and dignity for every Jamaican. While we have record low unemployment, we must continue to create more jobs for our people. While we have record housing starts, we must continue to build even more housing. We must continue to build more houses for our people. While we have record investment in security, we must continue to rebuild our security infrastructure. Let us build on the economic stability which we have achieved in this last decade to now anchor in this new decade our growth, peace, and prosperity.
creation, macroeconomic stability and fiscal sustainability, human capital development, social protection. That's the context in which the plans we have heard today are found, aiming towards this vision for 2030.
The Governor General and Lady Allen leaving together this time. They did not arrive together, Theodore, but they are leaving together. Concluding the ceremonial opening of Parliament. And I want to point out that perhaps in another 3 to 4 years, certainly the projection is by 2023, we will have a new Parliament building at the National Heroes Park. And the winning design out of many, one people. And we will also see the transformation of the National Heroes Park into Government Circle, and this is part of the master plan to redevelop downtown Kingston. On screen now, Prime Minister Andrew Holness responding to members of the media who will no doubt be asking him about some of the contents of the Governor General's throne speech. So the joint sitting of the Houses of Parliament has concluded. They will return for the tabling of the estimates of expenditure.
And we estimate that to be at about 2 p.m. this afternoon. Dr. Nigel Clark will table the estimates of expenditure, which gives us the fiscal direction of the government for this parliamentary year.
So at that time, we will know how much the government plans to spend for the 2020-2021 fiscal year.
As you mentioned earlier, Lorraine, public sector transformation will continue to be a major area of focus for the government in the financial year 2019-2020 and the medium term. That reform is designed to create a public sector which delivers excellent public services in an efficient and effective manner. And among those activities which will continue are the implementation of shared corporate services, the establishment of a new public sector compensation structure, and of course the acquisition of a national identification system solution for Jamaica.
And as we said, the Governor General touched on each and every ministry of the government, including the Ministry of Labor and Social Security, where he announced that the Disabilities Act will come into effect in the coming fiscal year. So persons with disabilities, members of that community, can look forward to that, as well as the establishment of a disabilities rights tribunal that will be established and will begin hearings. And the final thing I wanted to point out that I'm excited about, Theodore, is the electric vehicle policy. The government will not just be talking about electric vehicles, but actually 45 electric buses will be added to the fleet of the Jamaica Urban Transit Company Limited. So JUTC commuters will be among the first Jamaicans riding in electric vehicles come the new fiscal year.
Fantastic, fantastic. Right, so with the delivery of the throne speech, we have concluded the ceremonial opening of Parliament. But remember, the tabling of the estimates of expenditure occurs at, we estimate, 2 p.m. this afternoon. That second session will happen, and we're looking forward for the details on government's fiscal direction for this legislative year.
We thank you so much for having joined us for this, our live stream coverage of the ceremonial opening of Parliament and the start of the 2020-2021 legislative year. I've been your host, Lorraine Mendez.
And I'm Theodore Henry. We thank you for joining us, and we look forward to the estimates tabled later today and further insight into what our government plans for 2020-2021.
Mr. President, it is not intended to conduct any further business at this time, as is the norm. But I do wish to simply say as I had to leave the last sitting a bit early, that it's a momentous day for us on this side in respect of one of our members. And I think it's appropriate for us to acknowledge how much of an incredible support he has been serving as deputy over the preceding year. It has been, in light of my travel schedule, it has been an incredible lightening of the load to know that the capable mind of Minister Charles Jr. was always at the ready to ensure that the legislative agenda of the government could continue. So, Mr. President, I just wished to say formally and for the record that we wish him well as he moves on to other things. We wish him continued strength of character, clarity of vision, and purposefulness as he takes his efforts to another place. So, Mr. President, I ask that colleagues join me in wishing him well.
Thank you very much, Minister. The tongue of good report was already heard on behalf of Minister Charles. I don't think that he would consider it an affront if I were to say that. I think most persons who wish to speak have spoken. We are, after all, intending to elect Caesar, not bury him. I actually thought that was very good. Minister, you wish to say something, Senator? Go ahead, please.
With your permission, President, just a few words. Almost 4 years ago, it was 21 of us who had the distinct opportunity of entering this chamber. Some have gone, and others have replaced them, but the sentiment of partnership that I have unexpectedly been exposed to in this chamber really, in my view, Mr. President, reflects that the Senate is appropriately named the upper house. The level of deliberation, whether it is robust, sometimes even raucous, when you distill it, Mr. President, there always seems, even if attached to something political, to be a purposeful sentiment. I just want to say thank you to my colleagues on both sides. No, well, Mr. President, there comes a time when all of us have to determine how they want to serve. And so it is no secret that I intend and will submit a particular letter as soon as I remove from this chamber. So I use the opportunity to say thank you to our Prime Minister, the Most Honorable Andrew Holness, for his confidence that was reposed in me as selecting me as one of his senators on this side of the government, and to see that at that time I didn't realize the journey that I would have embarked upon. To the leader of the Senate, our government leader, called by me Superwoman, and who I think by now, since I'm no longer in her ministry, realizes that my utterances of positive affection and respect for her work are not only my efforts to appease my superior, but are truly a reflection of how I feel about her contribution to this country and her tireless efforts in this Senate, in the Cabinet, and elsewhere. To all of my colleagues on this side, the whip, Chairman Hill, and I will never forget the moment when Senator Morrison served just for a few minutes. And when you got wind of it, Mr. President, you ran back in. But for all of our colleagues on this side, I started sitting down beside Senator Webby, who would guide me and give me words of wisdom. And then I moved to this side, and he said that I was gone. I don't know what he'll say now. And I'm speaking with confidence, but we know that a lot is left to others and the Lord to decide. But Mr. President, permit me to just say to my colleagues on the other side, to the leader of opposition business, a lady who, inside and outside of this chamber, we have had opportunity to exchange words. Not raucous. And I have a high level of respect for you. And I know that in this political democracy, it's very competitive. Sometimes we cannot express ourselves without others taking it the wrong way. But I have no fear in saying to you, thank you for your cooperation, and thank you for being kind when you did not have to be kind. And to all of my colleagues, particularly Senator Lambert Brown, who when I came here for the first 3 months, took a liking, so much so that we ended up as caricature in the Observer or Gleaner. I can't remember which one. It has been a wonderful experience. We are many times at divergence in our views, but I think that I can say that we have been respectful, and there has certainly been cooperation across the aisle. Senator Knight, I need not speak because you and I, you understand our relations, and it flows beyond this room, particularly even my church brother, Senator Morris. So, that said, I'm speaking as if there is certainty, and that is because of the confidence that we have on this side. Let me just close off by extending an invitation to all of you, my good friends, who I respect highly. Do not be worried about the spaces being filled. We have room on this side for all who want to come over. Yes, sir.
Don't rush now, please.
But I close, Mr. President, by saying to the staff, thanks again for being so kind to all of us here and for guiding us. I will see you. I'm not going anywhere. But it is, Mr. President, as the leader said, it is a moment where you sit down and you have an opportunity to assess. And I must tell you, I have truly enjoyed the experience serving at this high level in the Senate. It is certainly a chamber which speaks to a higher level of deliberation. And I wish everyone here the best and hope that I do not see you again in the upper house. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Minister?
Thank you, Mr. President. And on that note, it is not intended to do any further business today. Might the Senate be adjourned for a date?
The question is that the Senate be adjourned for a date to be fixed. In favor? Aye. Against? This honorable Senate now stands adjourned.
one is immune to mental illness. Your age, race, gender, social class, or economic status is no match for addictive behaviors